Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy, and welcome to this tutorial on multiple backgrounds in CSS. So in this video we're going to be looking at how we can apply multiple backgrounds to elements in CSS. We're just going to be using a standard container, so a standard div element, but this can be applied to anything that can have a background image. We'll just be taking two images, which I'll show you just now. We've got this larger image bubble and tick. They're not great, but they were just knocked up quickly. So we're going to be placing bubble as a background image, and then we're going to be placing tick as a background image as well. Now, from CSS2, this isn't something that you would have been able to do. And what we would have had to do is we would have had to add more markup to our page in order to achieve this effect. So let me just give you an example of how we might have done this before. We may have had, for example, a main container, which we're going to be using anyway, like this container. Now we could set, say, a width and height to this container, and we could choose the bubble image as our background, as I've shown you already here. What we then would have had to do is we would have had to create another container within this for the tick. So, for example, div ID tick or div class tick, or however you were using these. Then we could give a height and a width of this, and then set the background image. Use our style sheet to position this tick ID within the container. So we're first of all creating a lot of unnecessary markup, and we're also creating a lot of unnecessary styles by having to style the unnecessary markup. So really this is quite a big problem. Now from CSS3 we can actually define multiple backgrounds for properties that accept backgrounds, and I'm going to show you the long way around doing it and using all the longhand properties, and then we're going to look at using the shorthand property as we have been doing already. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply this bubble image to this container, and then we'll go ahead and apply this tick as well. So over in images we've got this bubble file. Let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the properties. We've got, if we go over to details, we've got a 600 by 350 pixel image, so we know we can style our container to be that height and width. So let's go ahead and style the container. So I'm going to say width is 650 and the height is 350. I'll go ahead and I'll set a background color just for now so we can see where this is. If we open up our browser and refresh, you see we've got a container now that we can place our background onto. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. How would we normally do this? Well, we would use background image, and then we would define, specify the image that we want to load into the background. Now in this case it's going to be a URL, so I'm going to say URL. I'm going back a directory because I'm within the CSS folder here, and then I'm going into the images directory, and then I'm going to say bubble.png. So what's happened now is when I refresh we have this background image of the speech bubble. So what we want to do now is we want to define multiple backgrounds. So we want to include a second background image. Now it's actually extremely easy to do so, and you probably maybe already guessed that we use a comma separated list of values for multiple backgrounds. And of course you're not limited to two. You can include more than two. So let's go ahead and include this tick first of all, and then we'll perhaps include another tick in a moment. We'll just sort of make things as complicated as we can. So we want tick.png. Let's go ahead and refresh. Now you notice a problem with this already. It's not appeared. Now the reason it's not appeared is this tick image here now appears behind the speech bubble image. The reason for this is partly my doing. This doesn't have any transparency. So the background of this is white. It's a solid white color. There's no transparency. I haven't used any advanced or semi-advanced photo editing software for this. So if you've obviously got a solid image, like an image of a landscape or something like this with a solid background, you need to be careful of how you define your multiple backgrounds. So if, for example, I wanted this tick on the top, I'd define this first. Now, it might seem more logical to say, well, the last one should be on the top, but in actual fact the first one is on the top. So this is the top layer, if you like. Now we'll also see another problem in a moment when I refresh, and this isn't a problem that we get with this larger image, and that is a repeating issue. Now when I refresh in a moment, you'll see that the tick is repeated. That's because it doesn't fill up the entire container, and we haven't used a repeat property to control the repeating nature of it. So when I refresh now, you see that we've got lots of these ticks and they fill the entire element. So what we need to do is go ahead and set properties for each of these. So how do we go ahead and do that? Well, we can either go ahead and say background repeat, no repeat, no repeat. And essentially what we're doing here is we're saying we want the first image to not repeat, and we want the second image to not repeat as well, which would make sense. With regards to the bubble.png image, it doesn't matter, but we would still set it to no repeat. Now because we've defined two of the same property, as long as I'm only ever going to be including these two images, I can remove this value here. So I can just say we'll apply these or this property value to both of these images. So now when I refresh, you'll see that we've got a background here, and then we've got this in the top left hand corner by default, and it's not repeating, and we have multiple backgrounds. So now we're seeing the example of a multiple background. So let's go ahead and position this background image. So I'm going to say background position. And again, the same rules apply. We're using a comma separated list of values. We can position from the top and the left. So for example, if I said 50%, 50%, and then I said sort of 0 for that, or 0, 0. That's for the second one, for the bubble. We don't need to position that, but I want to position the tick from the top left hand corner, 50% and 50%. This won't center it entirely because obviously our image is larger than how the axis lays on the top left hand corner of our image itself. You'll see what I mean. It looks like that. Usually, if we expected 50-50, it would be just in the middle, but it's this point here that is now central. So we've positioned that. Again, any background position properties apply, so we could say top left, for example, which puts that back in the default, or we could say top right, and obviously that goes at the top to the right, and the same we could choose, say, bottom. Any properties that we already know how to use apply to this. All we're doing is we are using comma separated values. Okay, so what do we want to do if we want to use the shorthand property? Now obviously it's a lot less code, it's a lot easier to type, a lot easier to implement. So let's go ahead and get rid of all of this, and we'll do this all with the background property. Now this is actually quite this is a lot easier way to do it. The reason I've explained the long way is just simply because to understand the nature of this new this extended property. After the first and second or third and however many images you're including, you can just set the properties in there. So I could say no repeat, which I don't want it to repeat, and I could say 50%, 50%, for example. After here, I could say no repeat, and I might say 0 because or we could omit that value completely. So we have exactly the same result, and again, I've centered the top left-hand corner of this image, so we're getting it more or less in the middle. So that is multiple backgrounds in CSS, extremely useful to avoid the use of unnecessary containers or unnecessary markup on your page, and also avoiding any unnecessary styling.